Welcome back everyone. Today, we're continuing with the next part of this series, called What If Goku Remembered the Saiyans? My name is Ash. Please, for me, drop a like and subscribe to the page. Also leave your comments down below. With that, let's begin. Bardock narrowed his eyes, his stance tightening as he studied the figure before him. "I get the feeling you're not really my uncle," he said, suspicion sharpening his tone. Ginyu, now wearing Raditz's face, only grinned, folding his arms confidently. Just then, Raditz, now trapped in Ginyu's purple-skinned body, flew up, hovering nearby. "He stole my body!" Raditz shouted down, his voice rough with frustration. "Be careful fighting him!" "So that's your little trick," Bardock muttered, understanding dawning in his eyes. "It gets result," Ginyu replied, flashing a smug smile as he flexed his new, powerful limbs. "You'd be surprised how handy it is, switching bodies whenever I please." Bardock's expression hardened. "Then, I'll just have to knock you around until you give it back," he declared, clenching his fists. Ginyu laughed, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You foolish boy, don't you realize? In this body, I'm far stronger than you'll ever be. Raditz's power now belongs to me." Bardock's lips curled into a small smile as he shook his head. "Maybe, but not all of it. I can sense it. You're not using the full strength of that body. You're weaker than Raditz was." Ginyu's grin faltered just slightly, but before he could reply, Bardock launched forward, closing the gap between them in a split second. He aimed a powerful kick at Ginyu's midsection. Ginyu had no time to block, and the impact sent him flying off the pillar surrounding Guru's house, his body hurtling through the air until he crashed into a nearby lake with a tremendous splash. Bardock turned to Krillin and Tien. "Stay here and handle Vegeta if he shows up," he instructed, his voice serious. "I'll take care of this one." Without waiting for a reply, Bardock shot off, chasing after the body snatcher with a fierce determination. Meanwhile, Kakarot and Frieza's battle raged on. Frieza lunged forward, driving his knee toward Kakarot's stomach, but Kakarot reacted instantly, raising his own knee to block the attack. Their legs collided with a shockwave, the force pushing them both back slightly, but neither warrior gave any ground. They immediately sprang forward again, fists and kicks flying at each other at lightning speed, the air crackling with each impact. Frieza threw a powerful punch aimed at Kakarot's head, but Kakarot disappeared just before the attack landed, his form flickering out of sight. He reappeared behind Frieza, aiming a fierce kick at the changeling's head, but his attack connected only with an afterimage. Frieza's mocking laugh echoed as he appeared below Kakarot, pointing a single finger up at him. "Death Beam!" he shouted, a thin, deadly beam of pink energy shooting straight at the Saiyan. But Kakarot vanished again, leaving only an afterimage in his place. He reappeared behind Frieza, swinging a backhanded strike toward the tyrant's head. Frieza spun around just in time, blocking the blow with his hand and retaliating with a downward punch aimed at Kakarot's face. Kakarot leapt into the air, narrowly avoiding the attack, then spun and delivered a powerful kick that broke through Frieza's defenses, landing solidly in his midsection. Frieza stumbled back a step, but quickly recovered, throwing a massive fist into Kakarot's face, returning the favor with just as much force. Kakarot staggered, but quickly steadied himself, both fighters pulling back, each barely affected by the brutal exchange. Frieza chuckled, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "What do you say we turn this up a notch?" Kakarot's lips curled into a confident smirk. "And here I thought you were already giving it your all," he replied, his tone challenging. Frieza sneered, his expression darkening. "I'm not even close to my maximum," he said, a sinister edge to his voice. He clenched his fists at his sides, and a white aura began to swirl around him, growing in intensity. As his energy spiked, his horns turned a bone-white color, and his body began to contort and shift. His head stretched, 2 additional sets of horns sprouting from his skull, making him look even more monstrous. When the transformation finished, Frieza stood taller, his gaze colder and more predatory than before. "Now let's see if you can handle my third form," he sneered, his voice a low growl filled with menace. Raditz arrived just in time to see his nephew, Bardock, battling fiercely against Ginyu not far from Guru's house. From the looks of it, Bardock was overwhelmingly dominating. The young Saiyan was a blur, his speed and power pushing Ginyu to his absolute limit. Ginyu lunged forward with a punch, aiming straight for Bardock's face, but Bardock vanished a split second before Ginyu's fist could connect, reappearing instantly below the unsuspecting warrior. With lightning precision, Bardock drove his knee up, slamming it into Ginyu's gut. Ginyu doubled over, a spray of spit flying from his mouth as he staggered back, completely stunned. Not wasting a heartbeat, Bardock soared above Ginyu, bringing both fists down hard on his head. The force of the blow sent Ginyu crashing into the ground, the impact leaving a deep crater beneath him. As he struggled to his feet, Ginyu wiped a thin trickle of blood from the corner of his mouth. His eyes burned with frustration and disbelief. How can this brat be stronger than this body? He muttered, almost as if trying to convince himself it wasn't true. It's simple. Raditz's voice cut through the air with a calm, smug assurance. You may have taken my body, but you have no idea how to tap into its true power. Ginyu glared at Raditz, but before he could fire back, Bardock dove down again, his knee connecting with Ginyu's face, sending him stumbling back. Bardock followed up with a powerful punch, then another, each strike pushing Ginyu further into a dazed stupor. The young Saiyan capped off his relentless combo with a devastating roundhouse kick, which sent Ginyu hurtling across the ground, dust and debris trailing in his wake. Bardock landed gracefully, watching as Ginyu struggled to rise. Give it up, he said coolly, eyeing his uncle's body, now battered and bleeding. You're outmatched. There's no way you can win this fight. Ginyu staggered to his feet, wiping his face. A fierce determination flickered in his eyes as he clenched his fists, his knuckles white. He let out a scream of raw defiance, and a shimmering white aura began to form around him, his power inching upward as he tried to summon every ounce of strength that Raditz's body had to offer. Kakarot locked eyes with Frieza, who had just transformed into his third form, a twisted, monstrous shape that looked far more menacing than before. Frieza let out a smug laugh, his tail whipping back and forth. I see you're frightened, Saiyan, he sneered. Kakarot's gaze didn't waver. He smirked, holding his ground. I'll give you this. You've impressed me. But don't think for a second that I can't handle this. He took a deep breath, feeling the heat build within him. Kaioken, times 10, he shouted, his aura flaring into a brilliant red, blazing like fire. In an instant, Kakarot shot forward, his speed unmatched. He closed the distance between them in a heartbeat and drove a powerful punch straight into Frieza's jaw. The blow rocked Frieza's entire body, forcing him to stagger back. But Frieza wasn't going down that easily. Gritting his teeth, he shot his leg out, attempting to trip Kakarot. Kakarot flipped back in a fluid motion, landing on his feet just in time to block Frieza's 3 rapid follow-up punches. Each strike echoed through the air, the ground trembling beneath them. Frieza's tail whipped around, aiming for Kakarot's neck, but it struck only an afterimage. Kakarot reappeared right behind him, tapping him lightly on the shoulder. Looking for me? He said with a smirk. Frieza whirled around, fist clenched and ready, but Kakarot's own fist was already on a collision course with his gut. The impact drove the air from Frieza's lungs, blood and spit spraying from his mouth. Kakarot followed up with a knee that connected solidly with Frieza's jaw, sending the tyrant flying backward across the rocky Namekian landscape. Frieza managed to flip midair and land on his feet. His face twisted with rage, and he pointed a finger at the oncoming Kakarot, firing a barrage of death beams in quick succession. But Kakarot was undeterred. He flashed in and out of view, effortlessly dodging each beam as he closed in on Frieza once more. Finally, he appeared directly in front of the tyrant, his hand gripping Frieza's wrist in a vice-like hold. He glared at him, his voice cold with resolve. This is for all the Saiyans you slaughtered, he said, his words laced with fury as he drove his knee forcefully into Frieza's stomach. Frieza stumbled, clutching his midsection where Kakarot's knee had struck him. Pain and fury mixed on his face as he struggled to make sense of it. This filthy Saiyan was pushing him in his third form. He could hardly believe it, but even as the thought crossed his mind, a flash of doubt entered. Could this warrior actually be the fabled Super Saiyan? No, he dismissed the idea quickly. This monkey was still far from his own true power. Well, Frieza sneered, regaining his composure as he rose to his feet. Color me impressed. No one outside of my own family has ever kept up with me this well. He glanced at Kakarot with a sinister smirk. I suppose it's time to show you my true form. With that, Frieza clenched his fists tightly at his sides, and a surge of power began to radiate from him. A blinding light enveloped his body, forcing Kakarot to shield his eyes against the dazzling glow. The ground trembled as Frieza's aura flared even brighter. taking on a form far more refined and powerful. The spikes receded, his elongated head shrank back, and his body condensed into a lean, compact figure. His skin was now a pristine white, with purple patches on his head, knees, and elbows, almost deceptively unassuming. "That's more like it," Frieza said with a cruel, satisfied grin. "Now let's see what a mighty Saiyan can do against my ultimate form." Meanwhile, Ginyu cackled as he felt the strength he had managed to unlock in Raditz's body. The newfound power coursed through him, and he could feel its potential rising. "Now," he said with a sinister grin, "I think I finally have the hang of this." He shot toward Bardock, moving faster than before, and landed a brutal punch squarely on the young Saiyan's jaw. The impact sent Bardock flying backward, skidding across the ground. Ginyu wasted no time, pursuing his quarry with unrelenting ferocity, launching a barrage of kicks and punches that struck before Bardock could even fully land. The combo ended with a vicious elbow to Bardock's back, smashing him down into the earth, forming a deep crater beneath him. Standing over the dust-filled crater, Ginyu sneered. "Looks like this body's just too much for you to handle after all," he taunted. "I think I'll keep it. Feels like something I could get used to." From within the crater, Bardock's voice rang out in defiance. "Kaioken, ×2. A fierce red aura exploded around him as he rocketed out of the pit, faster than lightning. Before Ginyu could even blink, Bardock delivered a powerful kick to his face, the blow sending Ginyu soaring backward, tumbling through the air. Bardock vanished in a blur, only to reappear behind Ginyu, where he drove an uppercut deep into the stolen body's stomach, doubling Ginyu over. In one swift move, Bardock grabbed Ginyu by the arm and hurled him high into the sky, sending him hurtling into the air like a rag doll. Taking a steady stance on the ground, Bardock cupped his hands together, his aura intensifying as he channeled energy into his next attack. The words echoed through the sky, powerful and resolute. "Kamahama. Hey!" A brilliant blue beam shot from Bardock's hands, hurtling toward Ginyu, who barely had time to register the attack. The beam struck him with unyielding force, erupting in an explosion that rocked the landscape, filling the air with a blinding light and a deafening roar. When the dust settled, Ginyu emerged, blood dripping from a series of wounds now marking Raditz's borrowed body. Panting, he glared down at the Saiyan below. "You, little brat," he hissed through gritted teeth. He could feel the limits of Raditz's body weakening with each blow he endured. The boy was somehow stronger than this body could handle. He knew he'd have to make a desperate move if he wanted any chance of surviving this battle. With grim determination, Ginyu tightened his fist and drove it deep into his own chest, inches from his heart. He unleashed a small but deadly energy attack inside the body, tearing a hole through vital muscle and sinew. A twisted smile crossed his face as he thought, "That should keep the brat from being able to use this body when I'm done with it." Raising his hand toward Bardock, Ginyu gathered the last of his energy, grinning maliciously. "Change now," he shouted, releasing his body change wave toward the young Saiyan. Bardock's eyes blazed with determination as he faced down Ginyu, who was charging up his body change wave, desperate to swap bodies once more. But Bardock wasn't about to let that happen. He gritted his teeth, summoning more of his energy. "Kaioken, ×3, he shouted, his aura flaring even brighter with intense red energy, his speed pushing beyond anything Ginyu could follow. Just as Ginyu's attack flew toward him, Bardock leapt out of its path. In one smooth move, he reached out, grabbed Raditz, still trapped in Ginyu's body, and hurled him directly into the incoming wave. The flash of light that followed was blinding, but when it cleared, Ginyu and Raditz were both back in their original forms. Ginyu staggered, now back in his own weakened, bruised body, while Raditz lay on the ground, barely moving, but finally himself again. Ginyu's eyes were wide with disbelief. How did you dodge that?" he stammered, a mix of rage and confusion twisting his features. "No one has ever dodged my body change attack." Bardock's gaze was unyielding as he glared at the disoriented Ginyu. Well, there's a first time for everything. Without wasting another second, Bardock cupped his hands, gathering energy at his side. Me, ha, he shouted, unleashing a blazing wave of blue energy that rocketed toward Ginyu. The blast struck Ginyu head-on, engulfing him entirely. His scream echoed briefly before it was swallowed by the crackling energy, and in a final flash, all traces of the purple-skinned warrior vanished. Bardock wasted no time. He rushed over to Raditz, gently lifting his uncle's head. "Raditz, are you all right?" he asked, his voice filled with worry. Raditz coughed, managing a weak grin. "Oh, just great," he replied, wincing slightly. Bardock's gaze dropped, his heart sinking as he noticed the wound in his uncle's chest. Captain Ginyu had done serious damage. Raditz's body was barely holding on. Bardock quickly searched through Raditz's pouch, hoping for a senzu bean, only to find it empty. His uncle must have used the last of them to help Bardock and his friends earlier. "Hold on, Raditz," Bardock said firmly, determination in his voice as he lifted his injured uncle. "I've got to get you to Guru's. They might have something to help you there." Without another word, he took to the air, speeding toward the Elder's house, hoping they had some way to save his uncle. Elsewhere on Namek, Vegeta approached the tall, pillar-like house where he'd sensed Raditz and Kakarot's brat not long ago. Standing outside the house were Tien and Korilin, each holding one of the Dragon Balls they'd managed to collect, along with a small Namekian boy beside them. Vegeta's face broke into a smug grin. "Nice of you to gather those for me," he sneered. Tien's eyes narrowed. "We didn't gather them for you, Vegeta. We have our own wishes to make." Vegeta's smirk widened, his tone mocking. "Well then, it looks like we have a bit of a problem, don't we?" Krillin stepped forward, his stance firm. "We're not letting you use the Dragon Balls to make yourself immortal, Vegeta. That would be way too dangerous." Vegeta's expression darkened. "You don't get it, do you? We have no choice. Becoming immortal is the only chance any of us have against Frieza. From what I can sense, it feels like Kakarot's doing all right out there," Krillin replied, refusing to back down. Vegeta's voice rose with irritation, his pride flaring. "I am the Prince of all Saiyans. I'll be the one to beat Frieza, not that low-class clown." Tien stepped in, his tone calm but firm. "Listen, Vegeta. These Dragon Balls can grant 3 wishes. We need the first 2 wishes for ourselves." Vegeta hesitated, his eyes narrowed. Finally, he nodded, conceding for now. "Fine, but the 3rd wish is mine. I'll use it to make myself immortal." "All right," Tien agreed cautiously. "Just put your Dragon Balls down with the ones we have, so we can summon the dragon." With a reluctant grunt, Vegeta placed his Dragon Balls alongside the 2 that Tien and Krillin held. The small Namekian boy, Denda, stepped forward, lifting his arms as he began to chant in the Namekian language. "Arise, Purunga," he called out. Instantly, the sky above darkened, thick storm clouds swirling overhead as bolts of lightning began to flash. The air crackled with energy as a blinding flash of lightning struck the Dragon Balls, and a massive yellow stream of light shot up into the sky. The light twisted and coiled, taking shape until it solidified into a towering, muscular dragon. Unlike Shenron, Purunga had a powerful, robust build with an appearance closer to that of a Namekian warrior. The dragon's deep, booming voice echoed across the landscape. "You who have awoken me, speak, and I shall grant you 3 wishes." Dende stepped forward once more, addressing Purunga in Namekian. After a few moments, the mighty dragon's voice rang out again. "The one called Piccolo will be brought back to life," Purunga declared, his voice resonating through the air. On King Kai's planet, Nappa, Yamcha, Piccolo, and King Kai had been intently watching the events unfold on Namek. As they observed the distant battle, Piccolo's halo suddenly disappeared, fading away into nothing. Nappa's eyes widened, and he let out a loud laugh, clapping Piccolo on the back. "Well, look at that. Looks like you're alive again, green guy." King Kai turned to Piccolo, his voice carrying a grave warning. "They're going to wish you to Namek next. Listen, Piccolo. Under no circumstances are you to face Frieza. Do you hear me? You're no match for him. I know you want to prove yourself, but this is far beyond anything you've faced before." Piccolo crossed his arms, his gaze steady and defiant. "I'll do what I have to do, King Kai. If I ever hope to rule the Earth one day, I need to prove I'm the strongest. Eliminating the competition seems like a good place to start," he added with a dark chuckle. Nappa shook his head, rolling his eyes. "Hasn't dying taught you anything, Piccolo? There's more to life than just world domination, you know." A shadow of contemplation flickered across Piccolo's face, but he quickly pushed it away. "Maybe you're right, Nappa, but it's not just that. Frieza's henchmen humiliated me back at the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament. I've been called a demon, a monster, but I refuse to be treated as if I'm irrelevant. Not anymore." Back on Namek, Dende recited another phrase in his native language, his voice carrying a tone of confidence as he finished the wish. "The one called Piccolo will be brought to Namek," Purunga's voice boomed. echoing across the land. The dragon's eyes flashed red, and with a shimmer of energy, Piccolo appeared, standing right among the gathered warriors. Tien nodded in acknowledgement. "Piccolo," he said, recognizing the green-skinned warrior who still radiated a fierce energy. Piccolo gave a grunt, his expression unchanging. "Don't get too comfortable, Tien. I'm only on your side as long as this threat remains. Once Frieza is gone, things will be different." Krillin managed a slight smile, keeping his tone casual. "That's good enough for now, Piccolo. But Guru, the elder of this world, wants to see you. He's up in that house on the hill." He pointed to Guru's place, its towering structure overlooking the horizon. Piccolo shrugged, eyeing the house with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. This was his first time seeing his home planet, and the strange feelings bubbling within him were almost overwhelming. Namek's atmosphere felt oddly familiar, yet so foreign. He didn't know what to expect from Guru, but he figured he'd at least hear out this so-called father of the Namekians. As Piccolo entered Guru's house, he found himself face to face with a massive elder Namekian sitting upon an enormous stone chair. Guru's towering figure radiated a quiet strength, while Nail, Guru's warrior, stood guard beside him. Off to the side, Bulma watched, her wide eyes studying Piccolo with both surprise and relief. Guru's gaze was warm, almost fatherly, as he regarded Piccolo. "Welcome, child of Namek," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "It has been many years since you last set foot on this land." Piccolo crossed his arms, his expression guarded. "I don't remember being here," he said, his voice steady but curious. Guru gave a gentle nod. "I know, you were once whole, but now you are a part of what you once were. You were born from a split, a division of the one now known as Kami, who cast away his darkness to become pure. You are a product of that division, born from the evil that was left behind. But you are not your father. You are not King Piccolo. You are your own being, free to choose your own path." Piccolo's expression hardened. "I don't buy it," he replied, his voice edged with defiance. "I'm beyond redemption. All I've known is destruction and a desire for power." Guru's expression remained calm, filled with understanding. "Redemption," he echoed softly. "You have done nothing that requires redemption, Piccolo. You may have spoken of ruling, of domination, but you have always fought to defend. You were created from the dark side of Kami, but you are not inherently evil. The truth is, your nature is peaceful, and your desire to fight has been motivated by the wish to protect." Piccolo felt a strange sensation stirring within him, an impulse he couldn't explain. Almost against his will, he stepped forward, unable to resist the strange pull of Guru's words. Guru extended a hand, placing it gently on Piccolo's head. The touch sent a wave of energy through him, unlocking memories that lay buried deep in his mind. In an instant, images began to flood Piccolo's consciousness. He saw the split between Kami and King Piccolo, the very moment when the two had become separate beings. He witnessed the terror that his father had unleashed upon the earth, the pain and suffering he had caused. But then, Piccolo saw something else, a depth of remorse and guilt within Kami, a feeling that ran so deep it nearly overwhelmed him. Kami had released a monster into the world, a being that carried his own darkness, yet he had never stopped caring for his other half. Piccolo felt the warmth of Kami's compassion, a love that seemed both strange and inexplicably familiar. Through all the hatred, all the chaos, Kami had seen King Piccolo as something more than a monster. He saw him as family, as a part of himself, a bond that in some ways felt closer than that of a brother. And despite everything, Kami had never stopped feeling responsible, caring for his other half with a love that Piccolo could now feel himself. It was like the love of a father for his son. In that moment, Piccolo felt the lingering influence of his father, King Piccolo, fade to the background. He was still himself, still carrying the same memories, the same will, but now he felt clarity. A new sense of purpose surged through him, one that went beyond his old ambitions. He was a Namekian, a being with a place and duty to protect, not just for power, but for the honor of his people and his home. As he opened his eyes, Piccolo looked at Guru with newfound respect. Guru's weary gaze softened as he looked at Piccolo, his words calm but powerful. "You have great potential within you, Piccolo. Now that your mind is clear, I'll see what I can do to align your power more efficiently." Guru raised his hand over Piccolo's head, and a moment later, Piccolo's aura flared, a brilliant energy that seemed to shake the very air around them. It burned bright, fierce, and then settled back down, leaving Piccolo feeling the depth of his strength more vividly than ever before. Guru closed his eyes, his massive head dipping forward. With a final breath, he slumped back in his chair, his spirit peacefully leaving the world. Nail's expression was one of solemn respect. "He's gone," he said quietly. But then his eyes hardened. "Now, let's avenge what's fallen upon Namek." Piccolo's eyes flickered with renewed resolve, but he was cautious. "Hold on, from what I'm sensing out there, it still might not be enough." Nail's fists clenched. "We have to try, Piccolo. Frieza must be stopped, no matter the cost." Piccolo looked at him intently. "I know. That's why I have a plan. We'll have to fuse, Nail. Combine our powers." Nail stared at him, hesitation clouding his gaze. "Are you sure you want to go through with this? Once we fuse, there's no undoing it." Piccolo's expression was resolute. "We don't have a choice, but we'll need to use my body, so we don't lose the Earth's Dragon Balls." Nail took a deep breath, then nodded, understanding the sacrifice. "All right, Piccolo." He placed a hand on Piccolo's arm, and in an instant, Nail's form faded, merging into Piccolo's body. Power surged within Piccolo, his muscles tightening as he felt Nail's essence and energy merge with his own. A new strength coursed through him, both familiar and foreign, amplifying his abilities beyond anything he'd ever felt before. He laughed, feeling the combined strength resonate in his voice, now carrying the subtle blend of Nail's tone. "Yes, now we can finally do this." Without another word, Piccolo shot off like a comet, racing toward the epicenter of the battlefield, where Kakarot was struggling against Frieza. Kakarot lunged at Frieza, pouring every ounce of his strength into his attack. His foot arced through the air, aimed directly for Frieza's head. But Frieza lifted his arm almost lazily, blocking the kick with a casual ease. Before Kakarot could recover, Frieza shot his fist forward, striking Kakarot in the stomach. The impact was brutal, and Kakarot doubled over, gasping for air. Frieza sneered as he spun, whipping his tail around to smack Kakarot square in the face, the force of it sending him stumbling backward. Kakarot's aura flared red as he shouted, "Kaioken, times 20! His energy spiked, intensifying beyond anything he had ever dared attempt before. He knew the risk, it could tear his body apart, but he had no choice. Frieza's strength was overwhelming, and he needed every ounce of power he could summon. Charging again, he swung a fist at Frieza, putting his full strength into the blow. But Frieza merely caught Kakarot's punch, his grip ironclad as he held the Saiyan in place. "You foolish monkey," he sneered. "Do you finally see how hopeless this is?" Frieza's mocking smile grew wider. "You're giving everything you have, and yet I'm barely using 5% of my power." With a quick, brutal movement, Frieza lifted his leg, slamming his foot up into Kakarot's jaw. The blow sent Kakarot rocketing back, flipping through the air, but he managed to steady himself, gritting his teeth. He cupped his hands together at his side, energy gathering between his palms as he called out, "Ka, me, ha, me, ha!" A brilliant blue beam of energy shot toward Frieza, tearing across the landscape. Frieza, unimpressed, simply raised his hand and swatted the attack away. The blast flew off course, exploding against a distant island in a massive mushroom cloud. Frieza glanced back at Kakarot, his expression amused. "Do you see it now, Sane? The futility of your existence?" Without hesitation, he swung his arm, backhanding Kakarot with crushing force, sending him tumbling across the ground. Kakarot struggled to pull himself up, the pain from Frieza's blows coursing through his body. He could feel himself reaching his limits, his energy dwindling. How was he going to get through this? He hadn't been up against anything this powerful before, and he could barely stand under Frieza's relentless attacks. Suddenly, he sensed a new energy rapidly approaching, a power that was vast, almost overwhelming. The energy felt familiar, Piccolo's, but there was something different, something even stronger. It wasn't like the usual power he felt from his old rival. It was more complete, as though Piccolo had somehow become an even greater force than before. Kakarot steadied himself, knowing he had to hold on just a little longer. "All right, Piccolo," he thought, a slight smile forming despite his pain. "I'll keep him busy until you get here." With renewed resolve, Kakarot charged at Frieza once again, ready to keep fighting, even if it took every last bit of strength he had left.